last week on the Nicoletti Show. Let's welcome him to the show, Mark Drager. Mark, love seeing you, man.
Let's go. Here we are. The thing that gets attention is doing the thing that other people aren't doing and kind of being ahead of the curve. You don't want a brand. I don't want a brand. No one wants a brand. What we want is we want to stand out from our competition. What we want is to generate more leads. Your logo is part of your brand, but your logo is not a brand. At the end of the day, when you're running a business that has 7-figure payroll, you need to go where the money is.
What Mark's really talking about are real strategies to elevating your business.
The business objectives, the campaign objectives, and what do you want this specific asset to actually accomplish? The big 5, right? Objectives, target audience, motivation, context, and then message.
People think building a brand is a logo. It's a lot more than that. It's a message.
It's all the same stuff. Like, what is my goal? Who am I speaking to? What do they care about? What's the context and how do they understand me? And then what's the message? Trust me when I say that when you have a kick-ass brand, you have a badass brand, and people see your stuff, it immediately 10x's your credibility.
If any of you missed that episode last week with Mark Drager, you have to go back and watch it. I haven't had a guest on the Nicoletti Show talk about branding the way that Mark Drager did. He really broke it down. There were so many golden nuggets, true value in that episode. And I mean, we went for quite a while, and he really went from a beginner to an intermediate to an advanced stage when it comes to branding. And I loved how he broke down the differences between brandings and tactics and the different things that people think is a brand, but it's not a brand, it's a tactic. And there was so much value in the Mark Drager episode. So if you missed it, you got to go back and rewatch it. It's on YouTube. You can find the Nicoletti Show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. You can go back on Facebook. It's all over the pages. So you don't want to miss episodes like that. And you can check out all the amazing guests that have been on the Nicoletti Show, season 1, season 2, season 3 on all those platforms, and all the things on probate, partitions, and all the crazy things in the real estate world that you think about is on there. And I can't wait for this episode tonight. I'll wait to do a whole intro when I get going with the whole thing that I do in the beginning, but this is different. This episode tonight really is going to be a different one. And having brainstormed and done backstage stuff with Neil and talked about what he's going to talk about tonight, I really thought like this is going to be something of true value to the real estate community out there that doesn't focus on single family homes or land. Something different. So I can't wait to bring him on. Can everybody believe that it's middle of August already? Like, it's mind-blowing that we're past halfway through the year. We're almost in September. School started for everybody. It's just crazy that the year's just blowing by. And it's amazing. And we have so many quality guests that have been on the show. And this is another one that you're going to want to stay tuned for. Get out your pens. Get out your book. You're going to want to take notes on this, because I guarantee after this one, you're going to be wanting to get into commercial investing, especially after Neil. So let's get started. Hey, everybody. My name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and other parts of the country, right? I'm not just bringing on people in Florida that are just talking about single family homes or just land or just anything. We're bringing on people all over the country, whether they're in California, Ohio, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Iowa. And it's incredible the value that people have and the knowledge they have outside of our Florida market. It's incredible. And you can use a lot of this wherever you are. And you never know if you're partnering or JVing with somebody that's on the show or somebody that's commenting. And it's crazy that we can bring these kind of people on the show to help level your game on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show today, I have Neil Timmins. He is the commercial investing guy when it comes to commercial real estate. It's unbelievable what you find out when you really connect with people. And Neil, I thought about this one too when I was walking around today. You know, when you go to events and you network with people and you find out, hey, what industry are you in? You don't learn everything in that one moment. You don't know everything that person does. And I truly believe that it takes that other connection or another connection or whatever, wherever you are, meeting them again and again to really start finding out what they do. And when I was backstage brainstorming with Neil, I was on the phone with him and I was like, so, Neil, I really have to know, like, what do you get into? And when he was talking to me about what he gets into with commercial real estate, I was blown away. I immediately, I was glued, typing on the phone, ready to go, taking notes. And it just is incredible the kind of knowledge that he has when it comes to this. He is an intellectual mind in the commercial real estate space. And he's done over 2,000 real estate transactions, single family, commercial, you name it. Somebody that's been really in the game and for a while too. You go back to, he'll tell you the story going back to him starting as a realtor to getting into investing to really focusing on a niche in a niche market. And it's just so unusual when you get to meet someone like this and find out what they do. It's so powerful. And on the show, we're really going to break down so many things when it comes to whether it's focusing on a market, right? Do you go locally? Do you go nationally? What's the strategy there? We're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about partnering. That's big. He's been in the game long enough. I know he's got some real golden nuggets when it comes to that. We're going to talk about asset classes, the different types of asset classes in real estate. Marketing strategies is going to be good. Strategies on the types of commercial properties. We'll get into some interesting things on leases. I'll save that for Neil. But really identifying hot areas, things that nobody's talking about. And, we kind of forget when you get into a deal, now you have the deal or you buy the property. But then the question is, do you hold or what's the exit strategy? And I think that's super important. That's something I learned over the last year about the power of exit strategy. What is your exit strategy? So I'm super excited. I don't know if you can all tell. I'm super excited to get into this episode. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show, Neil Timmins. Neil, thank you for being on the show.
How you doing, buddy? It's so good to be here. We've been friends for some time, and we've had this on the calendar for months. So today is finally here. When we scheduled this so far out, I was like, well, in August, but I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun one. I appreciate what you do and your energy, and it's what you deliver to your audience. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, and we want guests on like you because you bring so much value to the table. And I just want to say, we'll plug it at the end. I was a guest on Neil's podcast, the Real Grit podcast, and he's bringing on people where he's pulling back the curtain and really getting into what investors do in their business and the strategy. So we'll have that at the end. And he's an awesome host. So you got to check that out. Huge value at Neil's podcast. Neil, for all those that may know you, don't know you, we got to really break down your story, your background. Sure. I think that's always important on the show. Tell everybody, like, how did it start for you? Where did you go and where are you today?
Yeah, no, great question. So it started as me being a realtor. I worked, how about just before that? I worked for Wells Fargo, got out of college, worked for Wells Fargo a couple of years. My mom was raised myself, my three younger brothers, and she got to a point where the kids were out of the house and it was time to go do something, to go back to work. So we were talking one day and she goes, what do you think I should do? And I thought about it for a couple of seconds. I was like, you know what? You'd make a good realtor. And she thought about it and she goes, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. So she literally became a realtor inside her first year. She finished her first year. We're talking. I'm still at Wells Fargo. She makes twice what I make working at Wells Fargo. And I was like, you know what? If you can do that, I can do better. So how about that for a competitive family? We grew up playing sports. I've got three brothers, all of us, just very competitive family. And so I got into real estate, became a traditional real estate agent. And that was my entry point into the industry of real estate.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was looking at where you've been before. Yeah. It's just crazy. I mean, having started at Remax and then being the top team in the country in Iowa in that market, and it's crazy, your journey. And then all of a sudden you realize that investing is that opportunity to like, well, wait a second, I don't want to do that on such little money. I want to make a lot of money, but find the right deals and get invested. So what was your journey with the single families and up until commercial?
Well, candidly, that was a struggle to even get to that point, to have that realization. I was a realtor for so many years, became, like you said, Al, the number one Remax agent when I was 29 years old here in Iowa, and owned a Remax for a number of years. And I can tell you just after that, probably when I was 30 or 31. I came home to one day to my wife of, I was 32, my wife of 10 years at the time, and our 3 little children. And she had them all packed up in the car and said she was leaving for good. And that was my realization point where I was like, everything I'd ever worked for, everything I ever cared for was in the car, ready to leave. I had slaved away out of choice to be a real estate agent. I was working hard, not smart. I at that time I pleaded with her to give me an opportunity to change and refocus. Thankfully, she agreed. 45 days later, I sold my Remax franchise. I took a lot of time at that point in time to hit a reset, to give some thought to what's my trajectory, where am I going, and really, what's the why behind it all. And the why, of course, was my family and making sound decisions and an avenue to be able to earn a living, a really good living, and have time with my family. So that's when I entered back into real estate and focused on investing. And I've done it all. I think you set that up in the beginning. I've done a lot of single families, a lot of fixing and flipping. And we still have a business of fixing and flipping today, although I'm not particularly involved in it. And then, the challenge there is there's a lot of positives. Challenge is it's a one-time payday. In order to make more, you got to do more. You got to work harder. Done a lot of wholesale, a lot of novation, a lot of wholetails. Same thing. A lot of single paydays and a lot of hard work is really what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I think it's interesting that you've been through all that before, right? There's people that are just starting out that are like, we're going hard as we can on rehabs, or, we're going to do this, or all of a sudden they're pivoting now to maybe doing land strategies, right? And it's just, it's great to bring on somebody that's got that experience, having seen the ups, the downs, and now you're just super focused on the commercial side of it. And we'll get into the asset classes. But, one thing I want to bring to the audience's attention is your market. I thought this was fascinating. Is where are you focusing right now, and what's the strategy?
Yep. So I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. Born and raised here, went to school over in Nebraska and came back here, and I buy in my backyard. I only buy in other marketplaces when I have a partner in another marketplace and the partner's leading the deal. Otherwise, I buy in my backyard. It is my comfort zone to leverage your relationships that I have here, leverage my knowledge base of the city and the people in the city to buy here. And so what you'll find with me, Al, I'm a little different in this sense. I'm asset class agnostic. I'd rather buy multiple asset classes in my backyard because I can leverage the relationships, and the knowledge gap for each asset class has become easier to fill in and the properties are become easier to manage versus, my comfort level would not be buying 14 apartments in 14 different states, trying to learn each state, trying to learn each submarket.
Right. And I think that's a great strategy, right? People want to know, do we go all over?
Sure.
You ask different investors, hey, where do you invest? We invest all over the country. But you're like, nope, I want to be in my backyard. But if there's a partner I can partner with that's in another state, but they lead the transaction, that's an interesting thing. I thought, again, I don't do what you do. And I thought that advice right there was fascinating, that you can get into that. So focusing and sticking to a local market sounds like a great strategy when you get into this, because then you get to know the ups and downs, where, who's moving into this area.
Sure.
But let's talk about the commercial assets and the different things that you're finding in commercial real estate. So, whether I'll let you go through it, but I had the apartments, medical offices, industrial, retail, storage, shopping centers. Talk to us about those different asset classes and maybe some of the benefits, ups and downs when you get into that.
Yeah, no, good question. There's pros and cons in every single asset class. Nothing's perfect, right? So apartments, for example, a pro right now is things are appreciating at a very good clip right now. Rent rates are rising pretty darn fast. So if you want an inflation hedge, there's been a lot of movement towards apartments. They have really good long-term financing strategies in place there. And then, the challenge with apartments, just like houses, is you've got tenants, and tenants require, just more care. There's more moving pieces relative to that tenant. Then on the other side of the equation, let's say it's an industrial building where, it's a 5-year lease. At least in many cases, it's a 10-year lease, and they're triple net leases, which means the tenant pays for everything. So you sign a lease one time for 5 years or 10 years, and you pretty much don't get phone calls. I mean, if we get a phone call a year on a couple of the properties, that's like a lot. And so there's pros there. The industrial side has been very much in favor, tremendous demand, right? As people go, more things move to online, just incredible demand from that standpoint. And so we really like it, the industrial components a lot. Retail, we still have retail holdings. I like the commercial retail. What I mean by that is service-based retail, some of the older retail, dog groomers, are not going away. Amazon can do a lot of things, but they're not likely to come in and cut your hair, right? Or do your laundry, to do a bunch of service-based businesses, generally speaking. And some of the food components there, again, we've had holdings that have Subways in them, Dairy Queens in them. They're really good holdings because they attract people. Most, Dairy Queen's a well-known brand. It's going to attract people to the retail strip mall.
Interesting. And what's the viewpoint on going towards one versus the other, right? I know one of your strategies is, hey, this is like a dent and scratch commercial property buying, right? Like going after distress, just like a house, a single family residence is all distressed. No different for commercial property. What are you looking for identifying in that kind of property that's saying this is a buy?
Yeah, good question. So, the best way to say it is I label it capital multiplier properties. We're looking for properties that we call it dented and scratched. Unlike the single family home where literally they're dented and scratched, right? And we're going back and putting things together. On the commercial side, we're looking for other, really one of five factors. It's either an item that has some vacancy associated with it. So higher vacancy than normal. Rent rates are a factor. So are the rents lower than what the market is carrying? Can we move rents in an upward fashion? Management. What is current management doing? Are there some pieces there that we can come in? And we've had instances where one of the best assets we ever bought, and we just turned around and resold it just a handful of months ago. We were able to come in and change our management. And that simply just meant enforce the leases, because there was a bunch of things not being enforced in the leases. And so that meant reducing expenses, increasing our income. And before you know it, we've got a capital multiplier effect and quickly change the value of that property in a hurry, and then rent and resold that property. Management. And then the last one is the physical condition of the properties. That's actually the last one on our list in which we look for on the commercial side of things, is changing the physical condition of the property so that we can increase rent or reduce the vacancy of the property.
I take it that's probably the least concern, because you can just come in there and fix that up if it's in a great location, right?
Sure.
Like if that's a hot market, why are we worried about what that looks like if we can get that fixed? But rental rates, vacancies, something we were talking about too is the location of it, right? There could be a commercial property out in the middle of nowhere that looks interesting, could be something, but maybe there's not a whole lot of activity there. Are some indicators of whether that property or commercial property is good buy, is whether there's been a lot of development of homes or communities surrounding it? Like, how are you getting ahead of the curve when saying, wait a second, that may not be something in a year, but 3 years from now, because D.R. Horton or the land over there, or they're going to build a bridge to get cars across. What are some of those other extraneous factors you look for?
Yeah, no, good question. And in fact, it's not so much going out like what you would have just labeled. It's actually looking inward. So because there's a lot of redevelopment taking place inside of the city. So the one I just referenced that we bought about 3 years ago, somewhere in that range, 3.5. That was one where it's been around since 1967, but the whole street was getting redone. Right. There was a lot of activity on this whole entire street. As soon as I bought it, city came in and inside of a year, redid the streets, put some medians in. My neighboring property to this one just had sold the ground inside of the first year of me buying it for a mint of a price. Just sold the ground, and a brand new gas station was slated to go in. In fact, it's under construction today. Tremendous amount of activity taking place there. And so that was as simple as identifying what's going on in the city. You can tell there's a lot of movement there. You can tell the city has Has he plan on the books to come in and change things? The city is not going to hide anything from you. They're going to tell you what their plans are. So it can be as simple as just talking to the guys at the city. They're going to tell you what the plan is, where they're headed. If there's something slated for a construction project, a street project, they're going to let you know what that looks like. And then you've got to make a decision. How's this going to impact this particular piece of property?
Fascinating, because I learned that one from Jack Bosch. He was at an event one time, and he was he was talking about like, hey, are you interested in buying land?
Right.
Well, here's a way that you can learn, and then following what's the city doing, what's the plan. So, like you're saying, that's huge. Or I think I was telling you, or maybe somebody else, that you never know what area is booming, right? Like I'm going through Destin and I get off I-10, and all of a sudden it's trees, and then it's just like Publix.
Yes.
Like giant Publix.
Yeah.
But there's nothing around. Or maybe there's developments I didn't even know about. But it's like when you see a Publix like that, it's like indicator, right? Like, well, wait a second. If Publix is here,
correct.
If Starbucks is here, if Walmart's here, the big corporate industries are also seeing something on the ground. Is that another really interesting way to follow where to buy? Like if you see that, you're saying, well, if Chipotle is opening up, that means that people are coming.
Yep. You're spot on. Yes. And so from the edge of development standpoint, for me, that's on the outside of the risk profile of what we would invest in from ground up stuff. But you're right. All those things are absolutely indicators of where's the trajectory, where are things moving, because the big boys are spending tremendous amounts of money to find the next location to set their business up for success in the future. And they're not looking 1, 2, 3 years down the line, right? They're looking 5, 10, 15 years down the line when they put exactly what you just said in. Walmart's in. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of money that has to go in to put the infrastructure in place and to get a size of property that they put up. Tremendous amount of money.
Yeah. I'm seeing all these factors right now.
Right.
I'm like head spinning when it comes to this, right? And you even mentioned rents. We'll talk about some of the things with leases and different strategies, but even rents, are you seeing that rental rates have gone up just as much as like with apartment complexes and other residential homes that are up for rent? Have you seen that market elevate with residential?
Yeah, residential apartments would lead that curve in terms of what rent rates, rent rate appreciation over the course of last year. Apartments at the top. Then you've got somewhere in second place, either self-storage facilities or industrial properties.
Yeah.
Those are the next two. Yeah. And we love both those asset classes. In fact, we just closed on a self-storage facility led by a partner out of Indianapolis for about 2 weeks ago. We just did a deal out there. So I'm excited about that deal and that asset class. Self-storage has been, it's just in tremendous demand. Americans can't stop consuming. We gotta have stuff. We need space for our stuff. Then you need space for your stuff. More space. Yeah.
Well, I bet a lot of people needed that when it came to having COVID, right? I mean, when that whole industry blew up, COVID's going on, and all of a sudden everybody's needing to get all their stuff out of their apartment and everything. It's just crazy. And they need self-storage units when it comes to that stuff. So we will definitely get into a lot of that with self-storage in just a minute. I just want to say, like, so many people right now are watching. And it's absolutely incredible. I love everybody that's on right now. It's amazing that we have an interactive show. Everybody, just if you love what Neil's dropping so far, drop a gem, drop a fire, multiple fires, put anything you want there, the bombs, because we want more of this kind of quality when it comes to a guest like Neil. Like this is powerful stuff. And Neil, we're going to go through the chat box in just a second because there were some great things going on. My guy Bhaskar, he is watching. Bhaskar, you're watching. He's got the whole team watching. He's like getting Maddie, Adam, and Austin. Everybody, thanks for watching. Really, really appreciate it. You got a question, Bhaskar? You got Neil live. Mike Novak, Mr. TikTok's watching. Christine's watching, and she's got some great questions. Christine loves commercial real estate.
I see her all over it.
Yeah, she's been doing the reels and TikToks. I see you, Christine. You're doing great out there. We'll get to that stuff that you talked about too. But amazing, Javier. Tony Flores is out there.
What up, Tony?
The Land Mogul is watching. John Alexander's watching.
All right.
Yeah, the great David Olds is watching.
I see his stuff everywhere now.
David, stuff is blowing
David's
up
everywhere. David's
everywhere,
So good.
everywhere. I love it. Just talking all about closings and tenants and landlords. It's quality stuff that you put out there, David.
Yep.
Love it. Love it. It's amazing. So let's go to some questions real quick while we're still on the asset classes, because I thought this was great by Christine.
Yeah.
She even asked parking lots.
Parking lots. It's a good question. We focus on 7 asset classes, 7 core asset classes, the biggest one. So that would be, I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. There's not that many parking lots. Like one company's got all the parking lots wrapped up. So I think it depends on where you are. For us, I like depreciable assets. So that means like buildings, right? Self-storage, apartments, industrial, office. I still like office, and we've got some medical offices. It's a sub-segment office that have performed extraordinarily well. We did a killer deal last year. And retail has still been very positive for us. Mobile home communities as well. We've got one under contract today, which we're working on. It's America's last stance at affordable housing, because that is, affordable housing in this country is out the window except for that.
I didn't even know. So is mobile home communities like parks?
Yeah,
like,
mobile home parks, mobile home communities, same thing.
So
yep,
that's considered commercial real estate.
It's considered commercial real estate. Yes.
Interesting. Didn't know that. Hey, golden nugget right there for anybody that didn't know that. I didn't know, but mobile home parks, that's crazy. And I think Christine was even saying service shopping centers are key assets now.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Like you were saying, she was talking about foot traffic. John at the Land Mogul was saying Neil has some amazing free software that simplifies selecting great deals from deals to avoid and prices it out for you. Hopefully he talks about that. Well, you want to talk about it? We're here.
Should we do it? Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, so I've got 2 things, and I'll certainly give it away to your folks for having me on here, which I'm appreciative of. I've got 2 things that I've created. One is the Capital Multiplier Quadrant. And in fact, John and I were just talking about this earlier today. So my Capital Multiplier Quadrant is this simple. When a deal comes in, you get an opportunity, it's how do you quickly sift and sort? How do you identify what is, a deal or an opportunity you should spend any time, energy, effort with, and what is a deal, just an opportunity that is better to pass along to your competition so they can beat their head against the wall and wonder why they're spending so much time not getting deals. And so our quadrant breaks that down to 2 very simple things: rent rates. So what's current rents and what are market value rents? And then also vacancy. What's the current vacancy and what's a market vacancy? So we've got, we literally input 4 things on a little Excel sheet on the quadrant, and it spits out a return for you. It's either a red light, meaning not a capital multiplier opportunity, a yellow light, meaning proceed with caution to the next step. You're going to want to ask some more questions, or a green light opportunity. Green light, good to go. Move to the next step. And the next step for us, when we do our masterclass, when we train folks, it is to identify what are we going to pay for a property. So now that we know it's an opportunity, how do we determine what we pay so that we can all but guarantee our returns?
Interesting. So yeah, it sounds like you have a whole system when it comes to that, right? And
for sure,
whatever asset type of class, and like he's saying, and he prices it out for you too, which is that's valuable because you want to know whether you want to go in that deal or not, whether it's worth getting into.
You're exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, Neil, you brought it up before, and maybe I'm thinking about it differently. Yeah. Explain the whole vacancy and the importance of vacancy, because you've mentioned that 3 or 4 times, and I don't get into anything you do, and maybe people do, but what's that? What's going through your mind when you're thinking vacancy for commercial real estate?
Yeah. So I'm thinking 2 things when we go into a deal. So a vacancy is simply, how many people occupy, or what percentage of the property is occupied. So it's that simple. So if you got 100 apartment units and you got 90 occupied, your vacancy rate is 10%. So you're 90% occupied. So when I'm looking at that, we're trying to identify what does that vacancy tell us? What kind of story does that tell us? Because it's possible to have a high vacancy, meaning, let's say it's a triple net deal and it's all or none. So meaning it's one tenant. So it's either all occupied or all vacant. So it could be 100% vacant. That could be a bad deal, could be a good deal. Depends on what the market, depends on really the rental rates and some other factors. And then it's possible to have a very low vacancy. So think of an apartment, same deal, 100 units apartment, could be 2% vacant. So 98% units are occupied. That could mean that could be a really good deal, could be a really poor deal. Depends what the rent rates are. And so that's why when we do the quadrant, these things interact with each other, because we want to know what are our rent rates at the same time and how do they reflect to market value. Because if you go in and a property is 98% occupied, it's entirely possible that those rents are under market value. And if we can move those rents upward to market value, we can get a capital multiplier effect. We can multiply our capital that we've been put into that property and get a tremendous return.
I like this quadrant because that's when you're placing it. Does it make sense based upon, the multiple factors that you're getting into with that deal? So that's huge. I didn't know that, but awesome. David Olds, he was saying emerging markets, right? Finding emerging markets is huge when it comes to commercial real estate. And Christine, we're definitely going to get into self-storage. I'm not passing that up with Neil because I know Neil knows all about self-storage, but I love the questions, everybody. I mean, this is huge.
They're so good.
I really want everybody. You got a question? Ask Neil. We are live. He will answer it. He will go into it. So I want to make sure everybody knows. Drop it in. Don't feel afraid. I see the chat box. I see all of you out here. Christine also said RV parks.
RV parks. Yeah. We don't do them. I've got a partner. The partner who led the deal in Indianapolis does RV parks. He loves them. Well, I'm more into, I don't like the things to be able to leave. And I know mobile home parks, of all the asset classes I just mentioned, can technically leave, but mobile home parks, mobile homes really aren't that mobile. And so most people do not, they don't go anywhere for the most part. And so every other asset, I like the physical structure of that and the longevity of it. And so I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's not an asset class for us that we pursue.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense.
They've been very much in favor. I can tell you that. What the COVID has RVs and people buying RVs, RV sales have been at record highs, and therefore RV parks have done extraordinarily well. So I certainly understand the appeal to it.
Well, I'm sure now it's been extraordinarily well because everybody wants to go vacation. They want to get out. They
Correct.
want to go. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, love it. And I definitely want to get into self-storage.
Sure.
I don't know where I was. I don't know if I was at the New View conference and I was sitting, we were all having a luncheon, and there was one guy who said, how many of you are into self-storage? And like only one person raised their hand. He was blown away because of how lucrative and what an opportunity it is for self-storage, because how many people have too much stuff in their apartment, too much stuff in their house. Talk to us about everything self-storage, but the ups, the downs, what to look for, maybe cash flow opportunities when you get into it, and anything about self-storage.
Yeah, about self-storage. Well, it's a tremendous asset class. It's performed extraordinarily well in good times and in bad. So even through the 2008, 9, 10, that whole crisis, it performed extraordinarily well. And so the other asset class, I'll just mention it, is mobile home parks. It performed very well through that era, that time frame as well. And the appeal to it is relative to a bunch of other asset classes. They're much easier to manage. So way simpler. You don't need anybody on site. You can oftentimes manage it through, the remote access on the gate, bringing people in. So from our standpoint, the one we just closed on, remote access at the gate, the ability to go rent it online. So you can rent it online or rent it over the phone, and you get your code, you get everything, you e-sign everything, and then you get your code. So that way you can open the gate and go to your unit and put the padlock on, and you're good to go. And in the event they don't pay, you just shut their gate code off so they can't even get into the property. So it becomes a lot easier to manage there. The other benefit of it is, in comparison to a couple other things like industrial, for example, mom and pops, a lot of mom and pops operate in self-storage. So versus industrial, not so many mom and pops. So it makes it easier to buy better deals in self-storage because of the mom and pop operation of it. So you can find a whole bunch of a tremendous amount of opportunity, because we can go in, you're not just buying real estate. When we buy property, we're buying real estate, but we're also solving problems. So we've applied, where I grew out of, the single family space, right? Where you're buying properties as is from a seller, you're paying cash, you're closing fast. You're solving people problems. It's really what you're doing, right? Solve people problems and it becomes a real estate solution. That's the goal on the commercial side. Now it doesn't look exactly the same, but they're still just people, and their problems manifest, and what they vocalize is different than somebody living in a house that's, let's call it collapsing around them, or they're having financial difficulties. They manifest in they're having tenant problems. They have other issues associated with the property. The cost associated with redoing something in a commercial property is far greater than that of redoing something in your own house. I walked the property last year in the apartment side where they had a water heater, commercial water heater. Don't ask me what it was. I think it was 100 gallon or maybe 120 gallons in a 12 unit. The commercial water heater cost them $11,000 in the middle of COVID.
Wow.
$11,000. I mean, a 40 or 50 gallon unit water heater cost me $800 installed. And I would have done everything I could to piggyback 3 of those things together to service the building. But $11,000, I mean, that type of thing becomes a real problem for a commercial property owner who didn't properly save, who didn't properly budget. That's a real problem. And so same thing on self-storage. They have other issues associated with what's going on. Rent rates and vacancy are the 2 big factors there. What are they getting for rent and what's their vacancy? So in the example of the one we just bought, it's like 98.7 or 98% occupied. So, 2 or 3% vacant. And so from that standpoint, well, all that looks good on paper. When you dig into the numbers, you find out we can move the rent rates 10 to 20% higher because he's been way under market value for the rents. So in a 3-mile radius, is absolutely the lowest for every comparable unit. So you can move the numbers up like that when it comes to a self-storage facility.
Interesting. So again, looking at vacancy numbers and
Sure.
what's happening, what area are we in? Are we like in Metro Orlando? Where are we? What's the usage, or how many people are using it, and what's that rent rate? That's very interesting. One thing that is off the top of my mind is climate control versus not. I see so many, what's the significance in the attraction for having a climate controlled self-storage unit and getting into that versus not? And there's no climate control. It's just maybe a single level self-storage unit.
Yeah. So, the pros and cons, from the user standpoint, they have things that they deem valuable that need to be in a climate controlled facility, or they just want them there and they're willing to pay for it. Right. And so it's just a cost benefit analysis. If you're looking at construction, and we're looking at construction on the one we just bought. So it's about 15,000 square feet. We've got space in the back of this property to add about another 22 to 24,000 square feet. And so we are actually in the middle of running a cost benefit analysis of climate controlled to see if the marketplace is going to pay us, because it costs more to make it climate controlled. Right. And so we're in the process of determining that, running the analysis to see how do we fit in the marketplace? Is there an opportunity, or are we better off not doing that and just making them non-climate controlled? What you see right now, the very big box, the biggest of players do the climate controlled, or at a minimum, they do some combination of climate controlled, non-climate controlled. So you'll see oftentimes a big 3 to 5 story structure of climate controlled, and on the back of their parcel of land, they'll do 6, 8, or 10 buildings non-climate controlled. So it becomes just a math problem, but you've got to determine what's the market to the best of your ability. Is the market going to pay up for it? Is there a demand for that? Or, is there just not a demand? And it depends on where you're at in the country, because some sections of the country, it's, you don't have wide variations of temperature. It's just not that big a deal. Then there's not a demand for it versus, where I am, we hit 100 degrees regularly in July, and, in February, we're going to be lucky to break 32 degrees for 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. Just doesn't happen.
Right. Depends on where you are.
That's right.
Literally the climate you're in matters when it comes to that. So,
right.
I think that's crazy because, for me, I'm thinking if I ever needed self-storage, I would go right to climate control. Right. I know, to me, I'm thinking it's safe. It's cool down in there. There's no issues. Unlike you never know what kind of forces are out there, with heat and weather. So crazy good stuff right there. The questions are pouring in. We're going to get to them. Pascal, John, don't worry. We're going to get to them. Christine asked a really good question, which was, what's the minimum square footage, your criteria for self-storage?
Our minimum is 10,000 square feet. So the way we map it out is, say a self-storage unit on average is 10 by 10. It's 100 square feet. If you want 100 units, it's 10,000 square feet. We like some size to it. And so we'll run there to about 40,000 square feet. We like to be maybe 50,000 if we can add on. But what you run up against as soon as you get to about 50 and you start getting much bigger is the players in that space change. Right. So now all of a sudden, you think this is the difference between, make up a number, buying a 10 unit apartment and a 200 unit apartment. Mom and pops, for the most part, are not running 200 unit apartments. There's some, but statistically, there's a whole bunch that run 10s. So if you can get a property with some size to it, but not too big, so you can stay under that threshold, really, which is about 50,000 square feet, where I start seeing some more regional players come into that space, we can still find really quality deals with some size to them.
Interesting. If somebody wanted to get started on that, right now, if they said, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go into self-storage investing, where would you begin?
Yeah, where I would begin, I'll give you some free training, and I'm happy to give that to you. Let's mention it now. If you want to go to my website, legacyimpactpartners.com/gift, GIFT. I'll give you a free PDF, how to get rich in the 20X niche. I call it Capital Multiplier Properties, Secrets Revealed. So if you go there, download that free PDF report, what you're going to get is you're going to an automatic email that comes out from me. All you have to do is do this. Just reply, Al sent me. What I'll do is I'll give you our 20X profit masterclass that I recorded last month. And I will send that free training to you. It's about 5 hours of training where I'll walk you through first how to establish a goal, how to identify your perfect seller avatar, what it is that you're after, whether it's self-storage or any other asset class, what's in it for you, right? Who is it that you want to attract? How to reach out to those people, how to find those people. So where do you get them? How do you get a list? And then how do you market to them? So I'll walk you through exactly how to send a letter, what letter to send to these people to get your phone to ring. I'll then show you how to quickly and easily sift and sort these people. So the capital multiplier quadrant that John brought up. Then I'll show you what to pay for them. So I'll give you their spreadsheet, exactly what we use to be able to pay for a property. How do you identify what you should pay for a property with the returns that you require? And then I'll give you the exact paperwork we use to lock up deals risk-free. Do you like that? Attorney out, risk-free, because I love locking up deals legally and, agreements that are legally tilted to our favor, to the buyer's favor. And I can tell you, when I got into this world of investing, I just used, standard paperwork. I used, paperwork in which our association realtors provided us, paperwork in which the bar association provided, all fine stuff. I'm not knocking it, but it wasn't legally tilted in my favor. And so we've created that, and I'll give that to you guys. You can get it there. Legacy Impact Partners is on the screen /gift.
That's huge. I mean, the value that Neil is giving right now is huge. If you've never been in the industry before, you're getting value from things that he's had to learn how to tweak over time, and like he just said, he started with the boilerplate things that they were given, but realized, well, wait a second, this is going to be tweaked to industry, a different industry standard, or how it works for him, right? We always are trying to figure out what's the best way it works for us in our industry. So huge value there. And I can tell you, Neil, the amount of people that are super pumped about your training, Mike Novak, super pumped, Bhaskar, super pumped for the training. Yeah. I think Mike was saying pumped about day 4 of Neil's training tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm in live training right now, a 5-day class, and Mike's in it, and we're running day 4 tomorrow. So I'm pumped too, Mike. Tomorrow's gonna be fun. We get into spreadsheets tomorrow and start determining what we pay for a property.
I love it. Was this episode a part of the itinerary for the whole day?
It just happened to time up. You and I had this on the calendar for a few months. It just so happened to line up during the week of what we're running, our 20X profit challenge. Yeah.
I love it. Awesome that you're watching, Mike. And Bhaskar was saying, I didn't get to follow along with his training this time around, but I'm definitely doing it next time. So, Neil, we'll make sure you plug that at the end, because I know big players in the room right now really want to get into it. Scott Osborne, he was also saying, does Neil offer a training? So, I mean, there's so much value to having that knowledge over all these years where you're saying, well, wait a second, I'll take all that knowledge, I'll explain it to you, I'll simplify it, I'll take all those years that I had to do and bring it to you. So awesome stuff right here.
It's years and literally hundreds of $1,000s in mistakes, and the hundreds of hours screwing it up. And so, what I share with people is exactly what I do in my own office. I make my living buying deals. That's what my whole team does. We're actually doing this day in and day out. It's my love. It's my passion. Because at the end of the day, I'm able to build a business. And that means for us buying properties, commercial properties that produce cash flow so that I can live the lifestyle I want to live. So from that very first day, Al, that I bought my very first commercial property, 3.5 years later, I became financially free because of what commercial real estate did for me. And now I'm sharing it with folks. You and I run in small circles, and I've shared it with people over the past, and finally get to a point where people go, dude, you need to share this with the world because you've done something and be able to streamline a process that is duplicatable. And
awesome.
So that's where I love sharing it with you guys.
Absolutely. And that brings us, I really want to come to back to another asset class in industrial. So I don't want to forget that. I circled it. I underlined it. I want to come back to that. But that brings up a great point as far as, getting into it. Bhaskar asked a great question, which is how big or difficult of a transition is it for someone in single family homes to commercial?
You have way more experience than what you know. And I think part of the challenge of commercial for the outsider looking into commercial, it can be big and scary because I think they're, and Al, you touched on it because I think people think of these big giant, the Walmarts of the world and the huge developments and all the things that go into this. And there's been a whole industry created around, in my mind, complicating things and making things more difficult, making it feel like a good old boys network. And it is just absolutely not the case. What we do, we're buying from mom and pops. We just had this conversation the other day in my office. I've got a new guy that just started late last week, Thursday. And so myself and Clint, my right-hand sales guy, we're chatting with him. And I said to Clint, hey, the last 3 or 4 deals, we talk about cap rates, which is simply just a measure of return. And I said, hey, the last 3 or 4 deals that you bought, how many sellers have mentioned that word? And he said, not one. Sellers, when we're buying directly from mom and pops, they're not talking about these complicated commercial names, these complicated either strategies or complicated terminology. They're just real people who just own a thing, right? An apartment building, which is just a big house, a self-storage facility, which is just like lots of garages, right? So it's really not that challenging, but Bhaskar, it does require having a plan. Because if you go off, and it would be true if you didn't know anything about single family and try to go in investing, you need a direction. I'm suggesting plug into somebody who's been there, done that, because they can shortcut everything for you, no matter what it is that you're doing.
Great advice right there. Thank you, Neil. That's great right there. One thing about Bhaskar, he's been really into all the land, buying land and either it's flipping or doing stuff with land. And I know I asked you this question, which is a great question for Bhaskar, is this, what about getting into commercially zoned land? What is your thought about that if you're getting into the commercial space?
There's so much opportunity there in the commercially zoned land or land to then rezone it and get it repositioned to be able to make tremendous money. Huge money is made there.
Wow.
So we've touched on a little. We bought properties with additional land. We're negotiating a piece right now that has additional 1.5 acres on industrial that we would do something with, most likely churn it, either that would be roll the land off and sell it, or turn that land, develop a thing and put another structure on the thing. For us, land is secondary to what we do because I like the depreciation. I like having the cash flow. And so tremendous money can be made there. There's a bunch of guys that could teach that better than I could, if that makes sense. John Alexander comes to mind, a bunch of folks who in that land side, but I know huge money can be made on that land side. And for us, it becomes the cherry on the top when we're buying a deal. And we've done that in other cases. We rolled off pieces and recoup our down payment. And all of a sudden, we're into a deal for very little money and we got a cash flowing asset.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity too. If you
Huge.
buy that and you never know a developer wants to come in and use and build a self-storage unit. I remember seeing somebody on Facebook one day, they bought land, they leveled it out, and the next thing you know, it's like 6 months later, there's a storage, climate controlled storage unit there. And it's
Yep.
like, well, wait a second, that was an opportunity for somebody, and it was a win-win on both sides. And I don't know if they zoned it from something that it was prior, but it's awesome opportunity. So great advice, Neil, on that one. And then John Alexander, the land mogul, he asked, which asset class is better for flipping? Should you not want it for your portfolio after due diligence?
Ooh, great question. Well, right now the commercial real estate industry is super hot. I would say, how about this? Which one would be the hardest to sell? Probably office, and everything else would be like splitting hairs at some point because there's such a tremendous demand for things. I'd probably put apartments at the top, self storage up there, pretty darn high. We have, and John knows this. I was sharing this with my group the other day. We've flipped a couple, 2 or 3 that come to mind, apartments where we identified a deal. Leads would come into us, not in other markets, not led by another partner. I get on things like this and talk to people and just out and about. And so people come in and they know we buy property. And so, we had a couple leads and put a couple deals under agreement in which we are in other markets, and we just simply turn around and resell the deals and locked up, one case, 125,000, another case, 136,000 on a resale of a property, which we essentially, just flipping other deals to other folks on the apartment side of things.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
when you know how to do the deal, even if you don't want to keep it, they can turn into 6-figure paydays.
Yeah. You never know what anybody can do with that kind of deal.
Sure.
Neil, you brought up something that I kind of want to ask you about, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or not.
Mm.
You said at the bottom would be offices.
Yeah.
You mean like medical offices? Is it because everybody's at home now, or is it because that specific industry has changed? Because I'm thinking before in the 90s, I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing it because I was little at the time, but
Yeah.
I would say at that time, it's probably a popular thing, right? Everybody's got their
Sure.
brick and mortar, they're putting their name everywhere, and all of a sudden you're
Correct.
saying offices. Why?
Yeah. Office at the bottom of the list because of exactly, you hit it on the head, the pandemic. So the pandemic has shifted the way people work today. And so there's a whole bunch of, if you looked at all the categories, office has some pretty big vacancy and certainly in big buildings, big companies, to a whole bunch of vacancy. I still think there's some opportunity there. You just have to be really selective on it. And if I was to, our big 7 categories at which we buy office, it would be at the bottom. John's question was relative to which one could you resell, which one would make the most sense. And I'm suggesting that office could be the most challenging, would take the longest to resell out of all the asset categories. Now we still own office. My own personal office, we bought an office in April of this year. Bought it was 50% vacant. And so we bought it and it's a property we're repositioning. It's got a tremendous location. There's a lot of things that are taking place in the city. We talked about that. The city over the course of the next 24 months, we're catty corner to a major street that's getting tremendous redevelopment. Streets getting redone, literally catty corner to the property. There's a 50 or 60 unit apartment building going up, and it has retail on the bottom. So there's going to be 2 new restaurants coming in. I just think there's a lot of things that are going to reshape there. And then I'm in small office. That particular one, anywhere from 900 square feet to about 1,300 square feet. So I think small offices, there's still an appeal there that's just a little different than, big giant corporations. You've got your accountants. There's a whole bunch of people who run small businesses that aren't going to do it from home. So you've got some medical professionals, some insurance people, some financial people. They're just not doing everything that they're going to do from Zoom. And you mentioned commercial or medical offices. We've got a medical office portfolio, a couple buildings we bought at the tail end of last year that have been very good to us. And that one in particular became a very interesting transaction. If you want to go with that a little later in the show, because there's a lot of moving pieces on that one. It's a fun story. I'd be happy to share that one in detail.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, we're here. We love to hear stuff about that, right? Stories sell, and they tell
Yeah.
a really big picture to everything. So
All
go
right.
for it.
So this is a little, we're going deep because we got a whole bunch of strategies at play on this one, but it's an absolute super fun story. So this was a 4-unit medical office portfolio here in my backyard. And so what was coming to market was for 4 different buildings. Okay. One portfolio, 4 buildings, and they were all different, meaning the commonality among all of them was there was an orthodontist that owned the properties and an orthodontist that he then occupied all the properties in some degree, but the properties were all over town and they varied wildly in values. So he wanted everything sold at one time. The challenge with bringing a non-uniform portfolio like that to market is you've limited your buyer pool because they're non-uniform, right? Somebody just wants, I want 20 of the same thing, not 4 of different things, right? And so we made an offer. I made an offer. I say we. When I say we, I talk about like this in my office. So I don't have a partner in my firm at my office, but I always say we collectively. It's a team. We're doing this together. So yeah, just to call that out, how I refer to us. And so we made an offer on the portfolio, and a whole bunch of people liked one particular building in the portfolio. It was the biggest of the building. And as we were coming and making this offer, it turns out that one of the 4 pieces fell out. Seller said, "Hey, we're going to keep this. We're not going to bring it to market." So now we're down to 3 pieces, 2 single tenant properties, and then 1 property with 2 occupants. Okay. A big giant piece of it. So it was about, I'm rounding here because you're taxing me back to last year. It's about $9.3 million. Okay.
Okay.
$9.3 million. And we made the offer on this thing. What I did strategically going into this thing is I knew there was tremendous demand for one of the 3. So my plan was to take this portfolio down 1 piece at a time. And I'll explain that in a second, what I mean by that, and then sell off the biggest of the 3. So I put the properties under contract and I wrote 3 purchase agreements. So what I didn't do was write 1 purchase agreement for 1 value and name all 3 properties in the purchase agreement. I wrote 3 purchase agreements, 3 different values that I named that totaled 9.3 million. And then I tied them together contractually, meaning the seller's protected knowing that, hey, Neil, you don't get to just take this 1 property and kill the other 2 contracts. You got to close on all 3. I said, no problem. I'll close on all 3 properties. They just have these values associated with them. Make sense so far?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Huh.
I'm following.
So what I did was take that 1 property, the property I knew had the greatest level of demand with it. We had a broker leading this because this property, this whole thing was brought to market through brokers. So what I did was I ended up getting connected with a broker. And again, it's a small city, so I know most of these folks. So I ended up getting connected with a broker who had a buyer for the big deal. So what I did was, cool. I'm gonna sell you that big deal off. We wholesaled that big deal off. And then I agreed to pay the realtor a fixed rate commission on that thing. Okay. Makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And so what I did was all the properties were tied together, all had to close on the same day at the same time. And so since I established the values up front on the way in, I put tremendous value on the big deal, right? And I signed this thing off at, I think we assigned 7.9 million to this deal. 7.9 million to the big deal. I signed it off at 7.9 million. So that means I'm going to make $0, right? So instead of me making dollars and cents on the deal, what ultimately I did was structure it so that when I took the other 2 properties down that I actually wanted to keep, they appraised for $1,040,000 more than what I had agreed to pay for.
Wow. Strategy there.
So what happened when I went to closing, they appraised for $1,040,000 greater than what I agreed to pay for them. I bought the deal with no money down. My lender advanced. My lender funded 100% of my purchase price. So what I agreed to pay, I funded 100% of the purchase price. We net $102,000 after the debt payment. So I put no money into the deal, wholesaled the big thing off, and now we net $102,000 a year after the debt is paid.
Right. Amazing. Hey, that's a masterclass right there,
Oh,
right?
that's a lot of moving pieces there because you got a wholesale deal and then how to properly structure it in the front end, knowing what the intended exit strategy is, and then getting the right lender to fund the deal on the back side. Right.
Yeah, no, I can already tell probably just from the chat box that everybody's just like
Yeah.
mind blown from things like that, right? That's strategy that nobody talks about, right? That's stuff that we need a Neil on to talk about. Like, hey, we took down this deal, and
Right.
this is like an overview of how we did it. And John just commented. He said, brilliant strategy. Because this is awesome, Neil. And I'm thinking, like, I wrote down some notes just so you know where my mind's at. I was like,
Yeah.
you said 9.3 million,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, no problem. But you said 100% backed by lending, right? So getting funding for a
Right.
deal like that. What is that like? I mean, this is it, you didn't say syndication, you didn't say pool
No.
money. You said
Right.
100% backed. Was that relationship? Was that a proof of funds? Like, what was that when you got into that?
Yeah. So we pulled it down, 9.3 million, 7.9 went out to somebody else. Right. So that left me 1.4 million. Right. So 1.4 million is what was left with to buy the remaining two buildings, which appraised at, 1,040,000 greater than that. And so, yeah, your question is, where do you find funding for that? I could have found it in multiple places from a lender standpoint. Thankfully, I've had a lender who, I started with on the single family side, and then I morphed my business into the commercial side with him. And, it's building relationship because he knows, because we've done so many deals together, largely in the single family side. And then but he also knows how I buy property. Because when I tell him, hey, this thing, we're buying it at X, it's going to appraise at Y. And I've done this long enough to know how these things are going to appraise or where the values really are in the marketplace. And by golly, when you do that time and time and time and time and time again, he knows, oh no, you know what you're doing. You've got to prove yourself on that. And he knows what my personal strength is, knowing that, yeah, well, we're going to deliver it. These how and it becomes relationship at the end of the day.
Yeah, relationship, and you're an expert
Yeah.
in the industry that knows
Yeah.
what that's like. So you've seen it over and over again, like you said. That's powerful. And then you said another key point, which we talked about in the beginning, like focusing on a local market, because you're in that local market
Yeah.
all the time. You know all the brokers.
Sure.
So another power relationship moment there is being able to find the right broker for that deal, so you're able to offload it, and then all of a sudden see that appraisal goes for way more
Sure.
than what you locked it up for. And I think there's just so many strategies doing 3 contracts
Yeah.
instead
Right.
of just 1 contract. So if you haven't already signed up for Neil Timmins' training, I don't know what you're doing right now. You want to learn everything commercial real estate. This is the guy. I mean, we haven't even gotten to like half the notes yet when it comes to this. This is like huge masterclass. This is great, Neil. I know everybody is enjoying this right now. I'm loving it. I've taken so many notes on everything.
Oh, this is
Um,
fun. I love what you do, man.
Thank
So
you, man.
good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to provide the best value, and we bring on the best guests. So this is amazing. Industrial. Let me talk about that, because you mentioned that on our brainstorm the other day, and I
Yeah.
was like, industrial. Like, I think of like a mill. I think of like some kind of plant. Like, what's the play there? What are you looking at, and do you do something else with it after?
Yeah. Good question. Industrial for us, they pretty much are big giant boxes. That's really what it is. A big giant box and somebody's in it. So we've got industrial, one of the very first pieces that I bought was an industrial about 18,000 square feet. And it's a bakery. So it's a bakery for the largest grocer here in the city. And they just, it's like delightful to drive past it because, it smells like cookies. This is wonderful. Um, and that's what they do. And they're triple net deals. Triple net just simply means, in its simplest form, um, they're responsible for all the expenses. So if something breaks, they fix it. We've got other industrial pieces that are occupied by more heavy equipment people. Another 15 to 20,000 square foot buildings that run all sorts of things. The benefit of industrial is they actually pretty versatile, because there's some newer industrial buildings I can think of. We don't own them, but I can think of in the city where, call centers occupy them. They're just going, you know what? We don't need an office. Let me drop a call center in there. And, it's got a 20 or 25-foot clear height on the thing. I'll drop a drop ceiling down all the way down to 10 feet and drop tons of power in and put cubicle haven in there. And before you know it, now it's cubicles, and they're just running call centers out of these things. There's versatility out of those things and what you can do. And there's such tremendous demand in the industrial side for storage, for running offices, running things out of them. They're tremendous. And they become, what I like best about it, they're so easy to manage. There's not, you don't have moving pieces out of there. It just becomes very simple to manage.
Interesting. Is there a minimum threshold that qualifies it as industrial versus maybe self-storage, or maybe self-storage is industrial, falls under that? What qualifies something as industrial?
Yeah, you're right. Self-storage would be a subcategory of industrial. Oftentimes, just imagine a warehouse. So I would just categorize that. If you think of an office, what it looks like, it's what you and I are occupying right now, right? But the next step to kind of I call flex, right? The flex is like the mullet of commercial real estate. So you've got office in the front and you've got warehouse in the back. And so that would be a flex type space. And then past that is industrial. And so oftentimes you'll see it, about 5,000 square feet, maybe would be an entry point. Sometimes you can find older buildings that are certainly smaller than that. And then, they go up from there, 100, 200, 300, 400,000 square feet, right? Amazon occupies 1 million square feet. I mean, hundreds of thousands of square feet in a single location.
Yeah. Amazon comes in. That's got to be considered industrial, right? Like we're driving on I-4 and all of a sudden you see that giant warehouse and just tons of garages. That's industrial, right?
It's industrial. That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'm thinking, you buy something like that and it's like, well, I got to find somebody to rent that kind of unit or rent, be a part of it, right? I mean, Amazon's a low hanging fruit right there if they want to bring in, but like, what's that process like, right? Because you're not just thinking, oh, this is a great buy, but I got to find the right tenant for it.
Yeah, find the right tenant for it. Right now, and this is where I go back to the capital multiplier quadrant, is when we get a lead, is it really, is it a potential deal, capital multiplier property is what I call them, or is it not? Because let me pause right here. Anybody can go buy anything in commercial real estate, and you can go clip coupons and have them sending money. Where my angle on commercial real estate is, I want to go in with minimal risk and maximum opportunity. I want to buy them like I buy dented and scratch houses on the fix and flip side, right? I want to buy them so I multiply my capital. And so that's why we have these moving pieces and mechanisms to go red light, green light, because that's what I'm looking for. And so that comes back to what's the rent rate and what's our vacancy? Because if I'm going into an opportunity, a market that has, 4% vacancy, and there's a tremendous amount of properties that exist in the marketplace, I know that me finding a tenant is not going to be hard. Commercial real estate agents live in that space and they have tenants. They've got people in their back pocket who want that space and they cannot find it right now. So filling that vacancy is not hard to do. And they want to sign up, a 5 or 10-year lease. I'd be looking at right now, if I had a vacant industrial space, I'd be looking at 10-year leases at a minimum with minimum bumps in place. Oftentimes you'll see 2% bumps or 3% bumps. I'd be pushing 3% bumps or 3% or the inflation rate, the greater of whichever it is. That's what I'd be looking for, because you're going to lock in and really multiply your cash flow over the course of the next decade. And you don't have to think about it. And then you can lock up tremendous financing, because if you get a tenant in place for 10 years, lock up tremendous financing, 10-year fixed rate financing on a commercial property. Incredible right now.
And that's a great plug for David Old's question. David, if you're watching right now, get ready. How complicated is the bank financing portion of the deal, working through that process?
Yeah, it depends on the deal, but my experience is it's not that complicated. It'll become more complicated, David, if you're buying a vacant property. You're going to have to generally put some sort of bridge or mezzanine financing in place till you get that filled with a tenant, and then you can put permanent financing in place. On the, it depends on the asset. Apartments, there's tremendous. You can go find 30-year fixed rate financing on apartments. On industrial or office, you're just not going to find that. It becomes very traditional commercial lending financing. Banks right now, you'll see 5-year financing, 5-year fixed rate financing with a 20 or 25 year amortization, David. Commonplace, we stretch that. I want to end up in 10-year fixed rate financing on everything we're doing. I want to lock in very long-term fixed rate financing, because as inflation creeps in, it provides a hedge for us. As inflation creeps in, I want to make sure I get my financing extended out as long as I possibly can to get the benefit of inflation driving up the rent rates in whatever asset category which we own.
Yeah, he just commented. He said, "Wow, it seems very intimidating to a small single family investor."
I totally understand, because on the small side, there's more moving pieces on the commercial side. But somebody with your breadth of experience, David, I can assure you, it is. I give you some training on it. It's not that challenging. Just knowing what it is we need to be talking about, or how we need to attack that conversation, it becomes a lot easier, and then it becomes secondhand.
Of value. All this is crazy. I mean, I'm learning so much about commercial real estate tonight. I didn't know before, and like I said in the beginning, it's amazing when you really start finding out what people do, and learning what Neil gets into is mind blowing. And this right here is the ultimate networking connection. Neil, it's like I get to learn everything that you get into. It's amazing that we do this. So David even said, "Wow, Neil,
look at David." I was going to be the one who said that. David now knows who I am. I'm the one who's blown away, because I've been following David's stuff forever.
There you go, David. Keep it rolling.
Yeah.
There you go. David, keep asking questions, because this is awesome. At Neil, I mean, I don't know if there's any more asset classes that you're thinking of. Christine was dropping things like industrial for entertainment, office flex space. She was talking about the high ceiling height, and the triple net. We'll talk about the leases. And you know what's crazy? We're an hour in, and there's just, I feel like there's just so much to talk about. And this is why we don't cap the show. Right? Like, we don't cap.
I love this. Just like any conversation, you and me sitting in a bar or having a conversation in forever, right? You don't cap that either. You just let it roll. And when it feels natural, you go, man, I can't wait till next time.
I know. It's amazing. We keep going. But this is all mind blowing. Mike Novak just dropped the mind blowing. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Let's talk about leases for a second, whether we're getting into triple net or leases on the differences, because everybody thinks lease, we're thinking a single family home, right?
Right.
A 1-year lease, or maybe even shorter than that. When you start getting into commercial property, you start getting into 2, 5, you just said 10-year leases. What is the difference that you've seen, or what are the differences between single family leases and commercial leases?
It's the biggest one is who pays for what, and how many pages is a thing? Because oftentimes we're inheriting a lease. What I mean by that is, we buy a property and it's got a tenant in it. And so we're going to inherit that lease. So it's understanding what that lease is. I mentioned the bakery, where, the industrial property, which is occupied by the bakery. When I bought that property, you ready for this, Al? Because you're going to love this as an attorney. This lease, the original tenancy of the lease plus all their options equaled 40 years. 40 years. That's how this tells you that, the largest grocery chain in the city, probably through the Midwest, they set themselves up for success, right? They wanted to look out that far and give themselves enough options to be able to make a decision at a later point in time. And so it's understanding, wow, what does this lease read like? And what is here, but it's not just what's here, it's what's not here. So some of that gets to be, we get better. I'm getting better every time we read a lease, because, another example, that lease is relatively short. I don't recall how many pages, but let's say, 20 pages, maybe 15, something like that. On the other side of the spectrum is, I bought a property a couple years ago, 2 years ago now. Dollar Tree occupies a property. That lease is probably 100 plus pages. And so you're going through that lease, and I feel like I'm you as an attorney. I didn't sign up to get in real estate to read 100 pages of stuff, but that's what you get into. You're going, all right, cool. And then you just break it down. I can tell you, I didn't read, coming out of high school, I wasn't engaged in anything. I don't want to read a book ever, but you get into a subject matter that you just love and you're passionate about. I'm like, cool, I'm going to learn some stuff, and pays us. So I'm really engaged. And so you go through that and you just, for me, I just break it down going, I'm not going to tackle a 100-page lease at a time because my retention rate won't be that high. I just make notes as I go. And I was the one, this lease wasn't done by me. It was done by a developer. So what that particular property we bought on the backside of a developer buying, redoing the property, putting the tenant in there and putting a 10-year lease in place. So that we bought on the backside of that. I was the one who read the lease and identified a hole in the lease, which they just forgot to talk about. Snow. What happens when it snows? Who pays for snow? How are the expenses for snow accounted for? So it's not just what's in the lease, it's what's not in the lease. And so I was able to identify that, brought it back up while we were in our due diligence phase. Due diligence just means a period of time which we get to review the property, everything associated with the property, and make a decision to move forward with the property or not. So I brought that back up, sent it back to the guys, and they go, "Oh yeah, we missed that. We'll fix it." And they did. It was no big deal, but it was no big deal in the sense that they fixed it, but a big deal in the sense of kind of got to address that one because it does snow here in Iowa. So we're going to want to make sure that it's addressed who's paying for that. And ultimately the tenant pays for that. So you want to break those things down. Go ahead.
Do you go in your training about like breaking down leases and like what you're looking for?
Yeah, good question. It's in our advanced training. So it's not in what I mentioned to you, but we do have it as coming up in our advanced training, which we're going to talk about that coming, you bet, because it's a component of it. Yes.
I could absolutely see that being a huge thing, right? I mean, everybody sees a standard residential lease. Yeah, it's got the same provisions. The statute, covers that. But when you start getting into the commercial leases, I could see that being, wait a second, you're going after a longer commitment. Yes. There's more at stake. Are penalties even higher? Or, sure. What are some things that you saw in the commercial leases that was like, whoa, this is getting serious?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. Penalties, not so much, it's oftentimes black and white. You're dealing with a Dollar Tree, for example. It's a credit tenant, publicly traded company. A lot would have to go wrong for them just to not pay their lease, a lot. And so that becomes a strength of that particular deal. As a result of the strength of the tenant, we're able to get in that particular deal, was able to get much better financing because they love the credit tenant. They're publicly traded. They don't even have to think about the tenant. They just firmly believe that tenant's paying. In those deals, the big difference is that there's checks and balances. What I mean by that is we read the lease, we go through it, we're looking for some things, get an attorney to read the lease, and then get a property manager to read the lease. If we're going to go to third-party property management, which we did on that particular asset, we get them to read the lease as well. So we're getting multiple eyes on that and getting multiple opinions because we can draw from, think about our experience, even though I have a lot of experience, I don't have as much experience as, a seasoned attorney who all they do is do commercial real estate work for a living. They've got more experience. And then a commercial property manager, and that's all they do is live and breathe property management. Right. And so they see a whole bunch of things in and out, and they've got check boxes because they know they have to manage it. And so they've got a checklist to go through. What happens here? Who's doing this? How does this get paid for? And so we're having those conversations through that process, through a due diligence process.
Wow. I could see that actually taking a lot of time and a lot of thought and almost like requires a brainstorm session with everybody around about, what are we not contemplating? What is in here? But that quote, it's not what's in the lease, it's what's not in the lease. That's huge for anybody out there that's thinking about, wait a second, we got to go through this kind of stuff.
Sure.
What are we looking at? And it's not residential stuff, right? And you're talking like you said, it could be a 40-year lease. I mean, that's getting into serious stuff.
Correct.
You're not talking about a 1-year lease.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I used to think about this and attack this very early on to go, oh man, this is such a drain. I got to read all this. And from, coming so many of the people on this call, I think come from the sales side, we're talking to people, we're putting deals together and love it. And to go into now you got to read 100 pages and you got to go ask for these 27 things. And here's a checklist, whatever it is. Right. You're like, that's a drain. I don't really want to do that piece. But what I've come to love is that part of the process. And here's why, because I can find additional opportunity in there. I can find opportunity that I didn't know existed when we put a deal under agreement in which we can make more money. I now can solidify our business plan and firm up our exit strategy on this thing because I know where we can uncover golden nuggets during that due diligence phase to go, oh, cool. I didn't know this was here. I didn't know that was there. And we don't know that is the case going into it because the seller had no idea. The seller is the one who didn't, in many cases, didn't manage the property the way we're going to manage it for tremendous opportunity. So I'm the one going in there and finding their, call it their mistakes, their holes, and we can plug those holes, and it just creates additional revenue for us, or reduces the expenses for us. Either way, it increases the bottom line and multiplies the value of a property for us.
Talk to us about property management, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, we'll get into marketing and direct sale
Yeah.
strategies for getting into those kind of properties, but let's talk about management. That's a big thing when it comes to single family or Airbnb. Somebody that
Correct.
wants to own all these Airbnbs, but now how do you
Right.
manage it? Probably no different with commercial. What are you looking for? What are some things that are red flags or things that you've seen in the past that aren't good with property management, and what makes somebody a good property manager
Yeah,
for
no,
commercial?
that's a great question. I can tell you relative to, comparison to single family homes, it's like night and day. It is, and I've had the experiences. I won't go into it here, but I've had the experiences in single family, and it's a very challenging, be very bumpy. Identifying commercial or residential property managers, and on the commercial side, it's just totally different. They are, in many cases, they went to school for this. They're formally trained for this. They make their living making sure they operate a property at a very high level that functions. They know they've got it. There's a different level of accountability. The level of financials we get and the transparency we get on the commercial side is wonderful. It's exactly what you'd want from any business. It's almost like having, to a degree, an outsource, CFO, because the stuff that comes back on the financial side is that detailed. So what we're looking for, though, is a property manager that the asset class we're buying is what they do, because they specialize.
Mhm.
So, unlike, you have it you have it in a lot of markets, on the single family side, they're like, yeah, we manage single family homes. Well, not all single family homes are the same, right? So you've got Section 8, Airbnb, all the way to luxury stuff. They're not all the same, but everybody almost puts themselves out there like, we manage single family homes. It's all the same. It's not the case. And the asset classes in real estate distinguish the difference between people. Some overlay, but a lot don't. So your apartment managers, for example, on the single family side, most of them will not do any other asset class other than, on the commercial side. Apartment property managers on a commercial side don't do any other asset class. That's all they do is apartments. And they're really skilled, and they end up in many cases in multiple marketplaces because they're accustomed to dealing with 50, 60, 80, 100 apartments or plus in many cases. And then you get into some of the other ones, other asset classes in many cases get easier. So the triple net deals on retail, on industrial, on office, they're some of the easiest deals to manage. Very simple. But it's having these conversations and going deeper with the property manager to know that they're a proper fit for you, given your business plan on the way into a property.
I like that because you're not just going after any property manager.
No.
You're going after a property manager that fits the asset class and that fits your model for what you're looking for. And the way you find them, is that just by Googling, or are you getting word of mouth to be able to find
Yeah.
them? Because I'm sure that's a big decision to
Yeah.
make. Forget just buying a property, but
Correct.
like trusting people to make sure you fill the vacancy. I don't know if you're controlling the rent on
Yeah.
your side of it, but also to make sure that they filter out quality tenants or
Yeah.
quality anchor tenants. What's that process like?
Yep. Yeah. So in terms of two things, I'll comment on there. In terms of finding people, yes, referrals. And then, Google works to be able to get to somebody, and odds have it, I've already heard of them or know who they are in this marketplace and can get a referral into them. And then we're asking for, give me a referral. Who's working with you? Whose stuff are you managing right now? Because I want to talk to them. So connect me up and let me have a conversation with them. Now, relative to filling vacancies, this is what I think I love most about the commercial side of things is there's a separation of duties. So only in apartments, almost only in apartments. How about almost only? I'll comment on a couple of things. Almost only in apartments is the property manager filling the vacancies. So on office, on industrial, those asset classes, you're end up hiring a broker who's going to fill that vacancy for you, who's not the property manager. Yeah. So that becomes a salesperson job to fill, which I like that because I like the division of responsibilities in those, that we're getting a salesperson because they're active. They know the clientele. They've got clients already in the marketplace. They know what the rent rates look like in the marketplace. And they're the ones establishing that with us on the way into a deal. So on mobile home parks, depending how you manage that, most mobile home parks are not outsourced to a third party. You're doing it yourself, or you've got a manager there that you've hired directly. And then on the self-storage side, same thing. It's either you're managing it yourself or you're going to outsource that to a property manager. In that case, they will establish with you the dollars and cents, what a new place is. And then your marketing drives that. They're not out there selling the deal, if you will, or selling the vacancy. Oftentimes the marketing's doing that. They're coming to a website and your website's selling that vacancy.
So not only is there an opportunity for brokers to help list that property that the investor just bought and want to offload, there's now another opportunity when it comes to filling the vacancies on the lease side of it. And I like how you're just separating the powers of what each industry is doing, right? Leaving property management to what they do with collecting and moving things along, but also using the marketers, the power players. What an opportunity for brokers out there to connect with people that are in a commercial real estate. Just forget just to buy and sell for leases. That's a little niche right there. I'm sure
it's a real big niche. Actually, it's a good portion of a very good portion of what their income is, putting those leases in place on that side of the equation. Yep. And there's plenty of people out there who actually specialize just in that. They barely even touch sales. They're lease first people.
And also talk to us about triple net leases. I know we were talking about that the other day. It's come up in conversation before. I know when somebody's talked about commercial property a couple of years ago, they were like, well, this is a triple net lease. That's a great deal. I'm thinking, okay, what is that? What is a triple net lease and what are the benefits behind that?
Yeah. So what a triple net lease is, what are the benefits, and then how to read the lease, because you want to understand that. So the triple net lease is where the tenant pays all the costs. So all the expenses associated with the property, the tenant pays. So what might not be there is who pays for things like the structure, the walls. In the event that wall collapses or your basement or your flooring, your foundation shifts, who's paying for that? So there's a couple of things that can get carved out in a triple net lease, like a roof, like a structure and foundation. Those are really the three biggest things. So if you compare that to an absolute lease, for example, like a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Walgreens, a CVS, those would be absolute leases, meaning anything and everything associated with that property, that tenant's paying for. They're not even calling you. They're going to have their own construction team to handle it. So a triple net lease is just below that. And the benefit there is us as investors, we get certainty knowing that, hey, I'm limited to just these things and that's it. I don't have to worry about utilities. I'm not worrying about the snow. I don't care if it snows 22 feet. I'm not paying anything this year relative to snowfall. We compare that to, for example, an apartment. That snow, if it snows none or if it snows a lot, you're paying for that, right? And so it affects your bottom line. But on a triple net deal, it doesn't. They handle it all. They're paying for it all.
Interesting. So
way more hands off as an investor. Just becomes so much easier. That's why I say the management of these things on a triple net deal is a breeze.
And does that come up with every commercial deal or certain ones?
Good question. Certain ones. Certain ones. Pretty much that in which is office, industrial, are the biggest ones that it comes up with. If you think of that, the smaller ones that have multiple occupants, self-storage, mobile home communities, apartments, that gets born on the owner. You're handling all those things to create a spot for somebody.
Yeah, I could see like it's going to be industry or asset specific
Sure.
when it comes to triple net leases. Fascinating. Never knew that before. And look at that. We're learning with Neil Timmins tonight.
Yeah, good.
I mean, everybody's still watching. I mean, this is amazing. I love how everybody's glued in, tuned in. Everybody's probably like mind blown by all this stuff.
Good.
So crazy good stuff. Neil, one thing we didn't get to cover, which I think is huge, right? It's like, one thing to talk about the asset classes, and another thing to talk about the benefits of now that you own that asset or a commercial property, we can rent it out, lease it out, or find somebody that can help manage that stuff. What we didn't get into was get the deal. How did you even find the deal, right? So let's get into some marketing strategies. I'm sure some people are going to wake up tomorrow and be like, we're all in on commercial now.
Yeah, right.
We're going straight for it. What are the marketing strategies behind commercial real estate? And is it any different than what some wholesalers do with single families, whether it's direct calls, mailers? What is it?
Yeah, no, it's not any different. How about that? Because and that's why I say for all my brothers and sisters in single family that you already know more. You know more than what you give yourself credit for as it applies or can apply to the commercial side of things. So it's as simple as, first you got to determine where you're going. So what do you want to buy? What does it exactly look like? And the training that I provide helps narrow that down to go, all right, really what it is that I'm after. And then how do we go find these people? Because getting the list is different now, right? Because, ABC LLC owns that property and not Al, right? So how do we find these people becomes different. And then it's a function of once we find them, once we know where we can go contact them, either from a mail standpoint or from a telephone standpoint, you got a number for these people. How do we go after them? So our communication style does become a little different in terms of we're just communicating differently. There's different benefits for somebody selling a commercial property that you're going to buy versus somebody selling a single family home. So principally it's the same, but just how we get there becomes a little different. And then it's a function of applying your marketing methodology, whatever that happens to be. So in my office, we do a multitude of things, right? We mail. I love mail. Mail's a backbone of everything that we do. Mail becomes stickier. We can communicate in mail really well, our value proposition, what it is that we do. That, and then people want to know who we are, meaning, who's Neil or whoever it is that's mailing out to them. They want to know that you're a person. They want to know that you know what you're doing. So oftentimes we get into a conversation or they're looking our website up. So they want to know some details about us. We also call. We still do some calling still. And we text. We still get people because we're buying from mom and pops. We're just buying from people like selling homes, right? We're not buying from big giant companies. You can go do that, but we're not going to get a deal, right? We're looking for deals, things that are dented and scratched that we buy from other people, just people. And so that's how we're reaching out to them.
And I know something you talked about before, which is, sometimes investors on the end, as the end buyer, will buy from the wholesaler or somebody that's assigning out the contract.
Sure.
But when I was like, how do you do it? And you're like, no, we go direct to seller. And it's like, wait a second, we cut all that part out and we just went direct to seller. I am the end buyer. And I'm sure that changes a little bit of the dynamics with the seller and saying, okay, well, wait a second. No, Neil's doing something with this property. It's not going anywhere after I buy it.
Correct. Yeah. And that's the value. That's, when we can have that conversation, most of them don't care, candidly. Most of them are like, they just assume I think that's what we're going to do. And whether we keep it or we move it along to somebody else just becomes secondary to them. They want, they've established what it is that they want. And then, we put an agreement in place and we honor that agreement and then make a decision, someplace along the way, how we're going to exit that property, whether it's straight away or, hold it forever type of thing. Right. But yeah. And then our second side of thing is, we still buy things through brokers. We build relationships with real estate brokers and we buy things from them. And that becomes, again, relationship building, doing what you say you're going to do, delivering on your promise, right? When we put a deal under contract, we're transparent about what we're looking for. What's it going to take for us to get to closing and what types of things we want to buy and carrying through and executing on deals, closing deals, right? The best way to get the next deal is to close the first deal because you become a performer just by buying your very first deal. You're ahead of everybody else who says they ever wanted to get into this industry. And brokers do notice that.
Interesting. Yeah, while we're on that subject, what is it like closing on commercial properties, like on the title side? Is it take longer than usual because you're trying to find maybe there's more corporate stuff involved, or maybe due diligence in the deal? Like, is it any different on the time frame or the complexity in getting that deal done for title?
Yeah. Great question. Title, that answer is no, but relative to getting it closed, the time frame is longer. There's no doubt about that. And that's primarily us driven, because here's what we do. We put a deal under agreement, and now we want to go into due diligence. So we got a checklist. Here are all the things that we now want to know, because oftentimes we're buying a property just like any of you guys on the wholesale side who nationwide wholesale on single families. You're buying a property over the phone, sight unseen, and you're relying on the seller's representation. We're doing the same thing on commercial. So it doesn't matter if we're buying it directly from the seller or we're buying it through a broker. We're relying on what somebody has represented to us. Oftentimes I'm not going to these properties, even when they're listed for sale, because I don't need to see them in many cases. We're going to rely and make our decision based on the information that's provided to us. Then through a due diligence, just a fancy word to say, to call it homework. We're going to now do our homework. We have a defined period of time, which we can do this due diligence, this homework, in which our earnest money is fully refundable to us. So we can get it back. So in some cases it's 30 days, some cases it's 45, sometimes it's 60. Rarely is it longer, but so anywhere from 30 to 60 days. So we're going through our checklist. We've got a standard process in which we follow to identify, hey, here are the things that we need to now know to verify. Well, Reagan said it, right? Trust but verify. Well, this is the verify part of that equation, right? So we're going through, we're doing that. And at the same time, we're running financing, meaning we've got the information over to the lender, and the lender is ordering an appraisal if we're going to keep a deal. That's running in parallel. So oftentimes our due diligence will, let's say it's 60 days, we'll close, about 30 days thereafter, because appraisals are taking a very long time on the lending side. And that's what it looks like. And so if we're going to move a deal along though, we're going to go and do our due diligence and market the property at the same time. Look for buyers. If you're going to wholesale it, double close it, you're going to take it to market, whatever it happens to be, you're doing to find another buyer or another partner on the thing.
Yeah, due diligence is everything when it comes to a deal, and
Sure.
like you said, you're making out that checklist that you've been through numerous commercial transactions.
Sure.
To be like, well, we're looking for this or this or this, or maybe you already know and saying, well, with title's going to want to ask for all this stuff. So
That's
do we
right.
have it? Because if you don't, now it's going to hold up the deal. What's that time frame like? And I'm sure you can be proactive when it comes to that kind of situation.
Oh, absolutely. And the faster you can, the more structure you can be on the way into this, the easier it becomes, right? The like last minute things where people are pulling their hair out. Most of those things in my experience could have been done 60 days ago, right? We just proper planning on the front end makes things so much easier for everybody else. Now, obviously there's some things that come up every so often, but 90+% of the time we can avoid all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. The other thing I wrote down here, I'm writing so many notes, Neil, and that was when it comes to finding commercial properties, it was how to find it. Is there like with single family, I mean, you're looking through a list, you see actually people's names.
Yeah.
Are there certain indicators you're looking for when sorting lists or with lead sources that, hey, this is viable? Are we looking LLCs or INC, like Inc? Like, what are those indicators?
Yeah, no, good question. The biggest, you're saying indicative of a deal, for us, no, not really on the front end, most people are not, we've got on the single family side, right? What are shut off lists, divorce, probate. How about that, buddy? A whole bunch of things that would be absolutely indicative of deals. We just don't have that. There's some that exist, but the list gets so tiny. For us, we got to cast a broader net. And so what we're doing is largely identifying the assets we want to be in, the locations we want to be in, and how long has the seller owned it. So that for us becomes our biggest factor. And the thing is, it's not like, on the single family side, where you can end up with in a single market with hundreds of thousands of potential. If that's all I told you, right? As a 3-bed in your area with sellers owned it 10 years, there might be tens of thousands or 100,000 plus. I mean, we're down to literally in some markets, only a few hundred. In some markets, if it's a major metro market, under 10,000.
Mm.
In my market, a few hundred to a few thousand. We're not talking about, it's not a big list. You're down to a
Mm.
very manageable list real quick.
Yeah, like with some investors, they'll only focus on homes that are like in a range of like
Sure.
250 to 350, right? And like what you're saying is that, when you're sorting through the columns or whatever roles or
Yeah.
lead providers that you're looking at, it's like you're looking for those certain things, how long they've owned the property, or
Right.
I don't know if you can see if there's an existing mortgage on the property, or what that
Sure.
payoff look like.
Yeah. Yeah. You can absolutely, in many of the databases, you can narrow down exactly, do they own it free and clear? Do they have a mortgage on it? Is there equity in it? What percentage equity there is in it? Yeah. Yes. For us, we've had just tremendous success going, how long have they owned it? They own it 10 plus years. Great. Let's go after them. Let's market. Do I know if it's going to be a deal or not? I don't know until I get somebody on the phone. And then the next filter is, after I get them on the phone, identify it's a deal. We go through the numbers. At that point, we're identifying, is it going to be a deal for us or not? Because it may still be a deal and I'll still take it, but it may not be one we portfolio. It may be one we move along to somebody else, still make six figures, and that money just goes in the old kitty to go get employed for the next deal we actually want to keep in portfolio.
Do you get into, and I don't know why this is on my mind, but creative financing? I see that word flashing right now.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, like, you could do sub 2 when it comes to commercial property, or do you do a lot of deals on terms?
Yeah. The deal we just bought, let's go through a case study if you want. The deal we just bought in Indianapolis with a partner, my partner led that deal, was with seller financing. So this is one, the seller had owned it for a number of years. He really is not so much a pain point. His pleasure point was he just wanted to be done. He wants cash flow, not cash. So he wants cash flow, not cash. And so what he decided he wanted to sell it on contract because he loves the cash flow. Wanted to be the bank. He owed very little left on this property. He actually bought it on terms as well from the previous owner who built the property. And so the deal was $1.4 million. We ended up putting $200,000 down. So the balance retained was $1.2 million. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
And he wanted interest only payments, 5%, 20 years. 20 years.
Wow.
He doesn't want his money anytime soon. 20-year, 5% interest only. Yeah. So I was like, okay, that sounds good. Non-recourse loan, right? It's all backed by the property. We can sell the property if we so choose. Guess what? The financing follows the property. Next buyer has to take the loan.
Nice.
How about that?
Nice.
I also made the debt transferable in this sense. If we decide we want to sell the property, but keep the financing, we can transfer the financing to the next property we buy. So he becomes our lender on the next property.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could buy straight up like you did with that, with the office complex, or you can do terms and structure it this way, like no different than single family. And that's fascinating. I see that creative side where you can really get into longer plays with the interest rates. And I bet now more than ever with the Fed moving the interest rates,
Yes.
it looks like they're signaling again from the notes that came out that it's going to go up again at some point. Who knows what that's going to do?
No, you're totally right. Even that financing from when we put the contract in place to when we close, interest rates moved, about a full percentage point during that interim. And I was like 5%. I was like, yeah, we're out on the fringe of it being good. And then we closed. I was like, well, that turned out pretty darn well. And if I look at what a fixed rate interest for 20 years looks like, you can't in commercial outside of apartments, you can't go find fixed rate debt for 20 years. It doesn't exist. And on the apartment side, it doesn't exist at 5%. Right. Tremendous financing. Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff right there. Another thing that we've talked about before is identifying whether you hold the property or what's the exit strategy.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't talk about exit strategy. Everybody talks about getting into the deals. We're going to buy all these properties,
right.
But thinking ahead, right? It's almost like, locking up a contract and closing and thinking about how does the deal close. Same thing with buying stuff. what are some indicators you look for, or maybe it's just it takes time to see it, but identifying a hold versus what is the exit strategy?
Yep, it's a great question. Knowing what that is, when we go into a property, I want to know what the intent on the backside is. And so for us, it has gotten easier over a period of time because we know what type of property we want to buy and where it should be located and what the intent is to hold it. So for us, if a newer property is newer, great. Is it going to have, are we looking at outlaying capital in the next handful of years? And if so, how much is it going to be? So we've got to start budgeting for those types of things. Um, there are certain types of properties, I think of, mobile home communities would be an example. If I look out 10, 20, 30 years, what does that look like? You're going to have turnover in the people there. No doubt. You have to have turnover in the product because a mobile home typically, 30 years from now, they're not going to look the same, that property. So what does that look like? And how are you going to have to maintain that property versus, if I get an industrial building, somebody's got 5 or 10 years in that thing, how's that going to be maintained? What does that look like? Apartments are a great example. If it's a 30, 40, 50-year-old apartment complex, what's the neighborhood look like? Because now I have to give another thought to that. And for most of the properties, or for a number of properties, you can buy really great neighborhoods. If it was built in the 70s, it's a tremendous neighborhood. And as the suburbs continue to move out further and further from town center, how's this neighborhood going to live? Because there's a whole bunch of people in many cases that they come back to that middle of town and those values start to increase. And other times the values can deteriorate. So you want to be mindful. Is there a trajectory of that neighborhood today? And if it's a positive trajectory and moving positive momentum, odds have it, it's going to continue to be positive. And if it's a downward spiral, you want to be mindful of that. And if that's what it looks like to us, we move some of those things along. Apartments, for example, if it's a C-class apartment, I can already tell you, I don't care where it is or what it is. We want to move that on to somebody else. We don't make a B-class apartments is where we do exceptionally well. And so I want to make sure that a C-class apartment gets moved to somebody else.
It's funny. I don't know what event I went to. I don't know. I saw on the screen, they showed A, B, and C, and I know exactly what a C looks like. It depends on where you're at, but and that's also a great point is of exit strategies. What's the projection? What's the use? Where are people shifting and moving? What's the population doing? Now, in the event there was a downward spiral, or maybe a small slope, are you like at that point ready to actively list it, maybe with the broker, get with other buyers? Like what's that list look like of saying, well, wait a second, this is happening right now. Who do I get with?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. There's a list of people that we want to go. All right. If this is time to go, how are we going to take this to market? Because what's happening in the market on the commercial side that is different than the residential side is this. There's a tremendous amount of 1031 moving at almost at all times. So 1031 money, it means this, that somebody has owned a property. They have now sold the property and they have proceeds from the sale of that property in order to reinvest. They are doing what's called a section 1031 so that they can avoid paying taxes right now. As long as they reinvest and follow some rules, you can take that gain on a property and reinvest it and not pay taxes at this point in time. And so, but that means there's windows of time. They only have so many days from when they sell a property in order for them to identify properties in which they can put under contract and then subsequently close. If they don't meet that window of time, they're paying taxes. And so there's oftentimes you'll see a lot of money chasing and just buying property because they don't want to pay. They want to do anything and they'll pay up for it. In some cases, overpay, in my opinion, just so they don't have to pay taxes.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a game plan for any scenario that's coming up. I see, right? Like I see anything that happens, whether it's going up and you're like, well, let's buy more. If it's going down, what's the exit strategy? That's huge. And being able to identify those patterns of what's happening.
It's from my football playing days. Keep your head on a swivel.
Nice, right? Like
where I came from.
See the whole perspective. I love it, Neil. Love it. Before we wrap up, I got two more things I really wanted to go over with you, which was, what is that one thing or two things that's happening right now in the commercial real estate market that really nobody's getting into or nobody's seeing, or it takes a Neil level investor to say, wait a second, this is an indicator of where the market's shifting? Or what is that one hot topic item that you're seeing that nobody's talking about?
That's interesting. Good question. Mm, there's a disparagement right now between buyers and sellers in the open market that, interest rates have moved really hard, from January to today or December to today. And you still have not yet seen a shift, in my opinion, in pricing on the sellers. So they still want December's pricing, but when you go to borrow, you're borrowing at nearly 2% higher, almost 175 higher. Well, you can't make those numbers work. And so, there is some conversations to say that. To me, I think you're almost at a spot where there's a level of stagflation in the commercial market, in the open market, because anybody who did sell or wanted to sell, a lot of them did it last year. Anybody who did buy, a lot of people will still want to buy, but they can't employ their dollars effectively this year. So there is a tremendous pent up in demand in capital wanting to deploy. The benefit of that is this: if you can find a deal, which I think means you get into go seller direct, or you're going broker direct and buying off market, meaning you're buying with a broker, but they've got a pocket deal and they're not taking it to market. You become that broker's buyer. There's a lot of demand for deals. So it means there's a lot of capital. You can find a deal, you can raise money if you need to go find something that's out there.
Value. I mean, huge. I mean, that takes experience, and I feel like that takes being in this niche all the time, right? To see this stuff. You have to be in there to start seeing this disparity of what's happening. So, Neil, tons of value from all of the stuff that you've talked about tonight. I mean, I've taken pages of notes.
You're amazing at asking questions, man. This is so good to be able to go this deep, and then hopefully add some real benefit to everybody here. These questions, everybody's been bringing such tremendous questions.
Thank you. No, we'll make sure we go through all the compliments, because people have been loving this episode tonight. So we'll definitely go through that. But lastly, I'll say the lifestyle in doing this, right? Everybody, that may be in the Jacksonville market, Florida market, Texas markets, a lot of them do single family, and maybe they see this and they go, wait a second, I got to get into commercial. How does getting into commercial change your lifestyle?
Well, the way it's changed it for me is so you can focus time, energy, effort in doing a deal. And we call it the 20X, because I can get a 20x return in comparison to a single family home. So meaning I'm doing one deal or I'm doing 20 houses. But from a cash flow standpoint, so much more significant. I mean, I was in single family homes for a long time, didn't achieve this level that I've achieved in 3.5 years and being in commercial. And we're just, I keep saying we're just getting started, because, once you hit a certain level of financial success and can buy back your time, I think that's really what it is. Number one, buying back your time. You can focus and concentrate that time and just way more fuel on the fire because your time gets focused. It's tremendous. And that's why, for me, it's about the ability to give, to make an impact in others, my family's life, and the future generations to come. That's why I name my company Legacy Impact Partners. My goal is to make an impact so significant in lives and sharing like this, that's so significant in the lives of others that it alters their legacy. It's that level of impact.
Amazing. Yeah. Impacting lives and really sharing your knowledge about what happens when you get into this. And, you're not just talking about $200,000, $300,000 deals. You're starting to talk about $1 million deals, like getting into big money, big lenders, building that relationship. So I think just everything you touched on when it comes to getting into commercial just shows the lifestyle that you can get into when you get this. And now you're talking big numbers. Being able to buy a property that appraises $1 million over after is, that's experience. That's not just that, a luck. That's just really getting into this industry every single day. Huge.
Yep. No, one of the things that I think intimidates a lot of folks is when you hear these numbers, you're like, oh, where in the world am I going to find this money? Where do I get all these things? There's two things that we do. Obviously, train people on how to find the money. And then we also, as I mentioned, partner with people. We partner with people in other markets who they lead the deal. And oftentimes I bring the money. So the deal I mentioned out of Indianapolis, which we bought, led by a partner, I bought all the cash to the deal. So I bought everything that's there, and we partnered on the deal, 50-50. And so we do that with people who we train, and the best place to get that is to go to my website, get the training, and you can learn more about what that is and about some of the opportunities that we do and how we train folks, because we want to make sure you know exactly what you're doing, be able to identify really good deals.
Yeah, let's make sure we tell everybody too. I know you have that live event, live, not even virtual, live coming up in October in St. Louis. I know you want to plug that because
Yeah.
that's gonna be huge.
Yeah, I've got a live training event coming up in October in St. Louis, the 27th and 28th. You know, the best way to get more details is to get that free training, which I mentioned, the legacyimpactpartners.com/gift, GIFT. You're going to get an email as soon as it comes out. You'll get that PDF, how to get rich in the 20X niche. Just email, hit reply. Just hit reply. Al sent me. And what I will do, we're going to get you free access to our 20X profit masterclass. And I'm going to get you 5 hours of training and show you exactly how to set a goal, how to find sellers, how to get sellers, how to get your phone to ring from these sellers, our quick evaluation tool, the Capital Multiplier Quadrant, what to pay for a deal. So I'm going to show you exactly what that is. So you know exactly how to get the return that it is that you desire, and then how to lock that deal up risk-free. I'm going to give you the exact paperwork we use in my office. So just hit reply, hit Al sent me, and I'll get you that free training. And then in a series of emails, I'll give you more details relative to that live event. So if you want more information, you can get it there.
I don't know who wouldn't be signing up for this after this episode tonight. I mean, everybody should be rushing for this live event. I mean, huge. I mean, not virtual, like you get to actually engage with people there,
right.
You know, really brainstorm, collaborate, and then you get Neil time, right? You know, you want to talk about this or ask questions and get into deep conversation about this huge opportunity. And Neil, we have to plug your podcast, Real Grit.
Podcast,
you know,
right.
Love it. I mean, amazing guest on your show. Tell us, you know, how did it even start, and what do you get into with the guests on your podcast?
Yeah, you know what? I love real estate, and you know, you already know this. I mean, I've done just about everything, just about a whole bunch of niches, and although commercials, my absolute passion, I decided to name it, you know, Real Grit. There's a lot of bumps and bruises, dings along the way. You know, nobody wakes up in perfection. All of us had to go through something, whether it's personal or professional or both, along the way. And so really we touch on a lot of stories about that, because real estate requires real grit. And so we touch on that along the way about what somebody's had to go through, where they start, what they went through, and where they're at now, and then the trajectory that they're on. And the stories that come out of this, I mean, have really been absolutely tremendous. I mean, I had one guy on a few months ago, and I mean, he talked about how literally he was at a point where he wanted to kill himself, and how he got himself out of that. What he has to tell himself every day, that today's going to be a good day. He's got to find something positive in it. You know, how one goes through depression to be able to get to where they want to go. You know, a good friend of mine out of Kansas City was in a firework accident last 4th of July. So just a little over a year ago, literally a firework exploded and lost his hand, almost lost his entire life. And what he's had to go through and how he's had to find a new life's purpose. It just absolute, you know, I'm giving you the kind of the real giant stories that stick out, that are just burned, etched into my mind, that I'm like, I don't know how you get back from some of this. To, you know, just more business challenge stories about what one has to go through, and the fight and the grind you have to go through, and the things you have to learn, and the challenges you have to go through to be able to get to the success. And you got to have some alligator skin at some point, because it's not, what we do is not easy, right? There's paths, and certainly a lot of folks like me have made it easier to follow a path, but you got to have a big fire in you, a big why, because he who has a big enough why can conquer anyhow, right? Nietzsche said that. And so you got to have that. And so it's a fun show, because we get to go, like we get to go a lot of different places, and in people's personal stories, and what's going on in their lives and their business.
Yeah, and some of the caliber of guests that you've had on that show are just high caliber. I mean, I know you've had Lee Carney on the show, which his episode was like,
Dude,
yeah,
he's so good. I
I
love
know.
Lee.
He finds those deals, and this strategy behind it, and really having guests.
He's a deep thinker. Yeah. And Ron LeGrand was on about a month
Boom.
ago. Ron's so good. He's such a
Yeah.
character. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun one.
Yeah, I love it. So, anybody, you got to check it out. Real Grit. It's on Spotify, iTunes. I don't know if it's on another platform, but make sure you check it out. Neil's got great content that's constantly dropping from the podcast, so you don't want to miss it. And I got to say, Neil, this has been wild. I mean, Mike, we must have had over 100 comments, people asking questions. I mean, just constantly people just loving the knowledge. I just wanted to go through it. I mean, we'll start from the beginning on some things that some people have said. One guy had all the fire signs and the clapping. Yeah. And then David Olds had all the fire signs and loved it. Mike Novak was loving this. And then somebody said, love the simplicity of his spreadsheets. That's a golden one right there. See, we didn't forget about you all that were dropping comments. I mean, there's
exactly.
So engaged in everything Neil's going through is wild.
I gotta say what's up to Gio. I see Gio there commented a couple times.
Gio, let's go.
Let's go, man. I know Gio was down and he pinged me earlier. He was down with Frank looking at self-storage units down in Florida. So I'm pumped to see what they come up with.
Nice. I love it. And Frank, he said, ow. And then Gio is watching and saying, hey, Neil, Timmins, and Al. I mean, just so many people. Frank S said, Neil is a great teacher. And Don was watching. Zach Least, he said, great stuff, fire sign. I mean, I'm telling you can't make it over. The whole chat box has been blowing up all night. Zach, I'll see you in Harrisburg tomorrow. Can't wait for the Central PA Investors Meetup. It's going to be awesome, man.
I can't wait to hear about that. I saw Zach down at Family Mastermind. I don't think we formally met Zach, but I saw him there, and he was talking about Ron LeGrand had just been at there. I think Zach has one of the best radio voices I've ever heard of.
Oh,
man. Hear that guy speak? He's got his voice is so killer. I think he could listen. He could just host a radio show. I'd plug in. I'd be there nonstop. So good.
Yeah, love it. Zach he throws on a really big event in Harrisburg.
Yeah, in Harrisburg, right?
Huge. I mean, Harrisburg of all places, and it's like he's killing it over there. It's awesome. Rob said had been enjoying the 20x challenge, listening to it the second time around.
All right, Rob.
People are just going crazy. Mike Novak with the mind blown, and David Old said, crazy good content, guys. Thanks to both of you. Thank you, David. Thanks David. For great questions.
Yeah, really good questions.
I mean, it helps so much. And then Gio, he said, Neil Timmins, phenomenal interview, brother, as usual. Learning more and more from you. Let's go. And
let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Love it.
Thank you, Gio, for watching. I mean, I strive on the Al Nicoletti Show to bring great questions and bring on amazing guests like Neil, because that's what really helps the community grow and change and morph into getting more into these deals and seeing more of this stuff. So really appreciate it. Thanks for all the amazing comments. And then Bhaskar says, I'm in Tampa tomorrow, Al Nicoletti. Anything worth checking out, let me know. Everything. The Wharf. Yeah. You got to go to the Wharf in Tampa. That's a big thing. I mean, anything downtown, I think, has been growing over there. Even if you get a chance to go to Clearwater, it's huge. So Neil, I just wanted to say, look at the comments, the questions from everybody. I want to just say thank you for being on the show. I thank you for taking the 2 hours of your time to be here and go through everything. I hope everybody joins the whole live event and anything, all the training that you're doing, which is crazy. So thanks so much for being on.
Oh man, this is so much fun. You're such a great interviewer. These questions are so good, and I love live because we get the questions, we get the interaction. It's so good.
Yeah, so good. You get amazing questions. Bhaskar, David, and Gio. I mean, you get people that are engaging with us and ask these questions live. Amazing stuff. Neil, before we hop off, I do this for every guest, and you can run with it in many directions. You can say it in one word. You can say it in 5 minutes. Final words, final thoughts on everything commercial real estate?
Everything commercial real estate. If you've got experience in single family homes, I'm telling you, it's easier than you think it is. You can make a pivot, make a transition, bolt it on your business. Doesn't mean you have to leave your business. In fact, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. You've got a successful business. Excellent. Take a little time, craft a little path, find somebody who can help me, somebody else, whoever, find somebody who can shortcut that for you and bolt it on your business. Create a path. You don't have to do a ton. Create a goal. Just get one, right? Goals to one. And you're like, all right, cool. Then reassess. Then the goal might be 2 the next year or 3. And you can do it. It becomes easier. And I'm excited for you guys. I can't wait to hear, I love hearing the stories and making impact in people's lives. Hopefully I've done that, reach out. If I can be of help, you just tell me how.
Awesome, Neil. Amazing episode. I want to say thank you again for being on, dropping so many golden nuggets and gems for the audience, for people out there, whether they're watching it live or they watch it later. I know there's going to be YouTube comments for sure that come from this, and the Facebook comments are just going to keep going, and it's out there in the mainstream. So just want to say thank you again. Keep doing what you're doing. Can't wait to see you at the end of September. That's going to be a blast. I can't wait. We'll sit there and definitely brainstorm and hear what's going on in your world. It's going to be super fun, man.
Thanks a ton, buddy. I appreciate you.
You got it, Neil. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Wow. I mean, I know I end my episodes like this all the time. Like, wow, crazy episode. But let me do it officially. This was crazy insane when it comes to commercial real estate. Like, number one, never had on a guest on the Al Nicoletti Show that talked about commercial real estate. I thought about that the other day too. I was like, I haven't had anybody on that really breaks it down. But Neil did a class act. It was a master class at breaking down commercial real estate, the asset classes, what to look for at leases. I mean, I'm sure everybody saw like multiple mind blowing moments from me too. And I mean, I saw like Mike Novak. I mean, just huge stuff when it comes to this. So if you missed any of that, I mean, you can even break it up into portions at this point. Find what you want to look at, and then watch that part, watch this part, watch that part. There's so much to unpack from what Neil said, and I love the fact that he's got this training, the live training coming up in St. Louis, the free training that's online that he told you about. You got to check that out. It's huge value. I mean, we learn from bringing on people that have the experience in the background and have been through the times, that have spent all their money on this. So if you missed any of this, you got to go back and watch it way from the beginning to watch Neil, because it was super jam-packed with info. I really appreciate Neil coming on as long as he did, because I want to make sure we provide the audience all this information. And like I said last episode, I think I said it last episode, which is there's no cap on the show. Right? There's no cap for me, at least. I'm not going to do the 20-minute, the 30-minute and keep the cliffhanger. No, it's all out there. Like we want to bring the heat, the fire, the energy. We want to make sure people get all of the content. So even if we go 2 hours, the numbers, Mike, the numbers have been up the whole time. They've been steady. It was up and steady the whole time. I love it. And it's just crazy. But I got to say, the one thing that really means a lot to me when it comes to the show and why we also do it live is the engagement of the audience. I love you all. I'm so happy you watch the show. We always want to strive to bring the amazing guests like Neil on that provide this content. But I love that the topic or the questions or what we're going over is fascinating to you, because I don't know anything about this kind of stuff, and I learned more about it. You all know I'm in the probate world all the time, or the weird and title stuff all the time, and don't even see this commercial stuff. There's people out there that are learning this for the first time that have been doing single family homes for 10 plus years and never seen this. And I just love the interaction. I love wherever you are, whether you're in Florida, Texas, Land Mogul, Geo, Bhaskar, Frank. It's unbelievable, the kind of engagement. And I want to say, please come on every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We would love to have you engage. We'd love to have you ask questions. Of course, next week I'm not having a show, so you guys got to come back the following week after that, because we'll have the best of from the season 3 next week. But I really got to say, as we keep barreling towards the end of the year, this is the opportune time to come on and ask these things and engage. And I really say thank you. Thank you for being on. Thank you for watching me. Thank you for watching Neil. Thank you for watching the guests and engaging. And I'm gonna keep bringing it. I'm gonna keep bringing. I see Gio. He says I'm listening to the replay again, bro. Awesome content. Thank you. You got it. And even David, Neil. I know Neil's backstage. David even said, "Whoa, timely advice on the final words, final thoughts." I think that's great, right? Like that's why we do final words, final thoughts, right? It's we want to have that final say from the powerhouse of Neil. So again, and whether you're driving, whether you're sitting, whether you didn't see this until tomorrow or a month or 2 months from now, keep watching, keep listening. Go back and watch it. And if you want more content like this on the Al Nicoletti Show and all the guests, the amazing guests that have been on season 1, season 2, season 3, you can check us out on YouTube under Al Nicoletti, the Facebook page, the business page, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. You can even watch the show on Twitch too. I don't know if anybody knew that as well, but you can watch it on Twitch. I don't know who's watching it there, but you can watch it there. Or you can watch all the micro content that's constantly dropping on Instagram, all the reels, all the golden nuggets and the quote cards. You can find all that out there. And you can find all the videos on probate, partitions, crazy weird title stuff that I get into. So it's a wrap, everybody. Again, love you all. Awesome stuff. And I can't wait for the next guest that we have on the show. So good night. I will see you all soon. Have a great one.